Spring trout fishing. It's one of the most exciting times of the year. The ice is finally gone. The fish are active. And every cast feels like it could be the one. But here's the problem. Most anglers head into spring completely unprepared, and they make mistakes that quietly destroy their chances before they even hit the water. Today, I'm breaking down the top 5 most critical mistakes that people make when planning a spring trout fishing trip, and how you can avoid them to catch way more trout this season. So mistake number 1 is ignoring the water temperature. In the springtime, warm water is king. Brook trout will be found concentrated within warm water areas of the lake. They thrive best between 11 and 16 degrees Celsius or 45 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. But when ice is immediately off and the whole lake is uniformly cold and just above freezing, even 1 to 2 degrees of difference in water temperature can turn trout onto a feeding frenzy just like that. Now to us, the temperature might not feel warm, but this slight difference is key when it comes to spring trout fishing. So if you want to find slightly warm water in the spring, here's a great place to start looking. The first one would be shallow, sun-exposed shorelines with dark bottoms. So these areas are going to absorb heat quickly from the sun, and they're going to warm up faster than the rest of the, say, rocky area around. Wind-blown shorelines are another great place to start. In this area, the prevailing wind is west, so an eastern shore is likely going to get a lot more wind and is going to warm up faster because that top surface water is constantly being pushed to that side of the lake. And the third spot would be inflowing water. Things like creeks, springs, any sort of water that's going to be coming into the lake at this early stage of the year is going to be warmer than the uniform temperature of the lake after ice out. The second key mistake I can think of that people make is fishing too deep. So a lot of people have it in their head that trout are a cold water species. So if you head out trout fishing in the spring and you have it in your mind that these fish are going to be in 20, 30, 40 feet of water, you're going to be fishing but missing 99% of the fish. In the springtime, the fish are going to be shallow. They're going to be between 2 to 8 feet of water. So a great way to target these fish at this time of the year is to cast parallel with the shore. If you can pull your canoe or even fish from shore and cast along the bank and break it down in a fan cast, casting every different angle in front of you, you can cover a lot of water that way. You don't even need a canoe. You can do it from shore. Find a nice spot that has all these things that we're talking about: wind-blown shores, sunny exposure, places that are going to draw heat. If you see a lot of minnows in the shoreline, that's a great indicator that there's probably going to be fish around. So by targeting the right depth of water, that shallow range, you're going to increase your chances of finding trout exponentially. You can expect it to stay that way till around the May long weekend, and then from there on, they seem to start kind of hitting their transition into summer mode, where they're going to start suspending over deeper water, but for pretty much the entirety of May, you will still catch them in the shore. I've witnessed many times where trout will come right to your feet before they decide to grab a bait.
There's a trout. There's a trout. Holy shit. Little one. Little one. Bite it. Oh, I missed him right there. No way.
They'll come to within a few inches of the shoreline before actually grabbing it, and this just shows how shallow they're willing to go in the springtime to feed. The third biggest issue I would say that people do is they overcomplicate it. In the springtime, it is super simple. You don't need a lot of gear. You don't need a lot of fancy stuff. It's basic fishing. You're going to want 1 or 2 rods in a 6 to 8 foot length, medium light to light action. So those rods are going to be in the proper weight class for fishing brook trout. They're in the right length. 1 piece or 2 piece, either is fine. But you don't have to break the bank for this. An ugly stick works just fine. You're going to want a decent reel in the 2000 series size, spooled up with between 6 to 10 pound fluorocarbon line. That's what I use pretty much exclusively for brook trout. Now, besides fishing rods, you're going to want a very good, nice, deep, rubber-dipped net. So a good net is crucial if you don't want to be losing fish by the boat, which happens 50% of the time if you don't have a net. And a nice rubber-dipped net so your lures aren't getting tangled, you're not ripping the mouths of these fish. With a deep basket, you can keep them well submerged in the water, and it's just good for the overall health of the fish and for upping your percentages of what you land when you hook into one. Along with that goes a set of pliers. Pliers are a must when you're fishing brook trout. The less handling time, the better. Get the hooks out quick, let them recoup, take a picture, let them go. And then, what everybody really wants to know, what are you going to put on the end of your line? Well, in the spring, there's a few different categories of lures I would bring. There would be spoons, spinners, small body baits, by that I mean like jerk baits, stuff like that, or gang trolls and flashers, or organic baits. Now, this might seem like a long list, but I'm going to just tell you guys a few different options for what I enjoy using and what I found to be effective when fishing brook trout. For spoons, number one has to be the Williams Wobbler W30 in gold or copper. That is my number one lure by far. I've caught a ton of trout on it in the last couple of years. It's just the perfect size for those spring trout. Sometimes they don't want to be super aggressive. They're not going to be hitting a huge lure, right? And these W30s are just that right size. They get to the right depth and they hammer a lot of fish. But Williams makes a lot of great lures. So there's the Wobblers, there's the Ridgebacks, the Nipagons, the Whitefish S, which is a new lure that I really enjoy, and I caught a lot of fish on it last year. So Williams takes the cake for spoons. All of their lures are made out of jewelry grade silver and gold. So 24 karat gold and jewelry grade silver. So they have an unmatched flash and they just kind of cover the whole board with everything you'd want in a spoon. I also forgot to mention the bully. So this is what I'm talking about. You can have very light flutter spoons like the Wobbler or the Nipagon, which are very thin, wobbly. They have a wide action. Or you can have dense spoons like the Ridgeback or the Bully. Now, these kind of are more of a swooping pattern, bigger baits, right? And they go deeper because of that extra weight. The Bully is 9/10 of an ounce, so it gets down to about probably 10 to 12 feet when you're trolling it. Some other honorable mentions for spoons, EGBs. EGBs are great. They come in very small profile sizes, almost similar to the W30, but they're heavier, so they do get a little bit deeper, and sometimes they work better than anything else. I've seen it happen. Another one would be Little Cleo. So actually my PB came on a Little Cleo perch pattern. And Little Cleos, again, are kind of a heavier, smaller profile bait. And then, of course, you have to mention the Weaver Grabbers. So those do work excellent. And again, they're a heavy, dense spoon. Small profile, maybe that big, but thick. And they just have a real nice fluttery action, and they work excellent. The springtime is really the only season that I fish with spinners for trout. A lot of people bring them, have them in their trout tackle boxes. But for me, springtime would be the only application where I'm going to use them. I don't normally cast a lot when I'm fishing because I'm generally trolling in the canoe. But if I was from shore in the spring, sometimes a spinner is all they're going to bite. I've had this happen to us before where we were casting spoons, we were casting worms, we were casting dead minnows. My brother threw on a spinner. Within 5 casts, he had 5 fish. So for whatever reason, the action just happened to turn them on and it invoked a bite. Now, some honorable mentions for the spinners would be the Williams Vortex. We've got the Mepps Black Fury or the Aglia. Those are legendary lures. They work awesome as well. Rooster Tails, another classic, work great. The Blue Foxes. Now, the Blue Fox was the lure that got it done the day that I was mentioning where we couldn't catch anything, and we got them all on the Blue Foxes. As soon as we put them on, hammered them. And then last but not least would be the Panther Martin. So for body baits, I'm going to be using small jerk baits, things like a Rapala Countdown or a Rapala Jointed Wrap or a Rapala Scatter Wrap, or small little body baits in the springtime, something that doesn't go too deep. Summertime we'll use things like the Berkeley Flicker Minnow or Flicker Shad, but they have a big bill, they dive. You want something that's going to stay in that top 4 feet of the water column, maybe 5 feet, and just cast, cover the water, cover the surface of the water, right? You want to be on the top, regardless of if you're in 10 feet or if you're in the shore. Trout feed up, and they're going to be in that warmer upper water feeding. For gang trolls, I like the Lake Clear gang trolls, the Hildebrands. The Lake Clear wobbler is a good like flasher setup with trailing it with a hook and a worm, or a hook and a fly. We've done both, and both work well. And then last but not least would have to be organic baits. So this is going to be worms, leeches, dead minnows, or live minnows. Depends on where you're fishing. For us, the majority of the time it has to be dead or preserved minnows. And there is also special reg lakes, so keep an eye on that and make sure you're not using organic baits where you're not supposed to. Now that seems like a long list, but I mentioned a lot more lures than you actually need. The most important thing to do is have a variation in sizes from small to big. You know, you want to cover that range, because if they're finicky, you're going to want to downsize. If they're really aggressive, they might be hitting something real big. And then having a few different colors is also beneficial. I don't find colors matter as much as action, so I would just stick to the classic metallic, silver, gold, copper, maybe a fire tiger. A couple brighter patterns like the Envy or the fire tiger would be all right. For the most part, I think it's more the action. Now with overpacking, a lot of people will tend to bring a ton of lures. I'm guilty of it myself as well. But I find what always happens with me is I have my tried and true lures. I have, you know, maybe 10 or 12 lures that I'm going to throw over the course of a week, and I bring in 50. So why bring in 50? Why not bring in double your confidence lures, right? So confidence is key when it comes to fishing. If you learn how to work a bait correctly, if you learn what depth it's at and know that knowledge along with how to get the action working properly on it, then having 3 or 4 of those lures, I think, is much more beneficial than having 50 random lures that you don't know how to fish with. Learn your tackle, learn how to use it effectively, and it will pay off in spades. Now, the fourth thing that I'm going to mention is something that can be very tough. For us specifically, when we're booking our backcountry trips in Algonquin Park, we book them 5 months in advance. So this one's a toughie, but number 4 is the weather. In the springtime, the weather is hands down the biggest determination of if you're going to catch fish or not. If you have a cold, dreary, snowy possibly day like we have today, it's only 2 weeks till trout season, the fish are not going to bite. They're going to be sitting somewhere on the bottom and they're not going to be active. It's the same all year, where if the pressure is bad and the weather is bad, the fishing gets slow. Try to plan your trips around nice weather. In the springtime, this is even more important in my opinion. If you can find nice weather and get 3 or 4 consecutive days of sunny, warm weather in that 10 to 20 degree range, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal fishing after a couple warm, consistent days like that. For whatever reason, when the weather is consistent, it's warm, that is when the fish seem to bite. They're easily patternable and they're feeding, they're bulking up. If I were to explain the perfect weather day for me to go trout fishing in the spring, it would be about 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, sunny with a little bit of overcast, and about a 5 to 10 kilometer an hour wind from the west. That would be perfect, hands down, the most consistent weather you could have. Get that for a couple days in a row, you're going to be hammering fish by the end of it. Now this can be tough to do when you're planning weeks or months in advance, so just try to play it by ear. If you get bad weather, well, you get bad weather, you can't catch them from the couch. But if you have the option of, say, the next 2 weekends you have free and you want to plan a trip in one of them, one of the weekends is rainy and cold and the other weekend is warm and sunny, pick the warm and sunny one. Now this brings us to the last and probably the most important thing to consider when trying to effectively catch trout in the spring, and that is the location. You guys know we don't blow up spots. I'm not gonna name drop you a bunch of spots here, but I'm gonna tell you what you should do to get to the right locations, what to keep in mind when you're planning your trip. The first thing to consider, and probably one of the most important things to consider, is getting away from bass. Bass, I can't express this enough. Get away from bass if you want brook trout. Okay, they don't coexist well. Smallmouth bass and brook trout have almost the exact same living areas throughout the year. The same depths, the same structure. They're feeding on the same bait fish, right? So they don't go well. Even largemouth and brook trout don't combine well either. The bass are gonna overpopulate and they're gonna literally eat the brook trout out of house and home. So I can't express it enough. If there's bass in the lake, you're probably not going to catch many, if any, brook trout. Get away from bass. Now this ties into the second point, which is distance from your access point. Try to get in a little bit further than the next guy would, right? If there's a couple portages, just plan to leave a little bit earlier. It's a little bit extra work. You could be paying a lot of money for a gym membership to burn those same calories. So think of it that way. It's a free workout. You get to go to better fishing waters. Don't be intimidated by a couple little portages. It's literally just a walk in the park. If you want to fish near your access point, then keep your expectations low, because those lakes are generally not only going to have bass, but they're going to see an increased amount of fishing pressure, right? So these fish are going to see a ton of lures. They're going to get hooked. And it's going to be tougher fishing because there's going to be less fish for one, and they're probably also going to be a little bit smarter when it comes to biting your line. My best advice would be to focus on unpopular routes. Don't go do a big popular loop that you see everybody doing online. Pick a spot that's out of the way, maybe a smaller lake with 1 or 2 campsites, because then you know at any given time that lake is not seeing a ton of pressure. And in my opinion, smaller lakes are easier to fish because they're easier to break down. If you can find the fish, you're gonna catch the fish, right? You just gotta put a lure in front of their face. So in a smaller lake, it's easier to find them than in a big lake, which can be pretty intimidating at times. When you think brook trout, you think pristine, right? Pristine conditions, a landscape that is still the way it was 10,000 years ago. Brook trout are an indicator species. They are a telltale design of a healthy natural ecosystem. So when planning your trout trips, plan to get to these areas. You're not going to be catching brook trout in downtown Toronto, I can tell you that for free. You might. I shouldn't say that because you never know. Crazier things I'm sure have happened, but think pristine. You got to think clean water, well oxygenated water, less external pressure. There's so many variables that go into lakes that are easily accessible by people. Brook trout relate to spring water in their entire life cycle. They are literally born in springs, lay their young in springs, and live on or around springs for a big portion of the year. Now, brook trout need spring-fed water to spawn successfully, whether that be in lakes or in inflowing creeks. So when you're looking for a good location, consider that. You want to have inflowing water, preferably spring-fed water through the ground or a creek that you know has springs along it, because if you find those areas, that's what trout have to have in order to sustain a healthy natural population. I could go on and on all day about the variables and what to look for, but at the end of the day, it's more about just getting your boots on the ground, going a little bit farther than the next guy, getting away from the bass, and taking into account these 5 things that I just mentioned. If you're overlooking even one of these points, it may be decreasing your fishing success by an extreme amount. So take these into consideration this spring when you're out fishing. Think about what I've said and apply it. And you should notice an increase in your catch rate for trout this spring. So thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Brendan Spolsky, and this is the Average Joe's Fishing Show. Don't forget to subscribe.